Hello, this is the Manchurian General, and today I'm going to do a video about a particular sort of weapon. Now, this weapon in the historical aspect was quite rare, but it still exists regardless. But because of that, we're going to more look at this in a more, medieval fantasy sort of setting. Now, what is this weapon I'm talking about? The weapon I'm talking about in particular is called a two-handed mace. It's pretty simple. It's just a big two-handed mace, or a mace that is designed to be used with two hands. Not the one-handed version. No, we're not talking about that. Although we're gonna bring that up a couple of times here and there. But no, the principal weapon in this video is the two-handed mace. Now, I gotta bring something here. You've seen this before. We're gonna use this as like the example that we're gonna use, because some of the points I'm gonna illustrate require a visual reference, so to speak. Now, today we're going to talk about the pros and cons of a two-handed mace, and in the sense of, could you make it work? Now, first let's talk about the advantages of a one-handed mace first. They're easy to wear. It's not that long anyway. It's quite short, actually. It can be as long as the average one-handed medieval arming sword. It could be slightly shorter, but it falls around that range, so like between 2 feet and 3 feet. So it's easy to wear, relatively wieldy. Again, it is a top-heavy weapon, so there is that, but generally it's it can be a quite nimble weapon, especially if you're used to it. If you're used to it, it can be a very nimble weapon. 3, it hits hard. It's a bludgeoning weapon, so it's very good against people in armor, which is its principal target in the first place. And 3, it can be very cheap. It can be. Now, you do get the metal, like the full metal maces, with the metal halves and the forged welded head, but those are generally later, but they still kind of apply to this video. You can just use a simple wooden haft and put a mace head on it. That also can work. Now, it can be very useful in most combat scenarios. Say you're fighting close quarters. It's a short weapon, so you won't really have the problem of like hitting stuff, like hitting a wall, hitting the floor, hitting the ceiling if you're fighting indoors. It's a short weapon. You can use it in close quarters quite easily if you know what you're doing. It can be used with a shield. Shields increase your level of defense even more. Oh yeah, I forgot I have this. We can use this as an example of a one-handed mace. It's quite small, but you get the visual of what I'm trying to go for here. You can imagine this as a mace. Now, let's recap. It can be used with a shield. It's quite maneuverable. It's quite easy to wear. It can be cheap, and it can be used in a lot of combat scenarios. Now, what are the cons of a one-handed mace? Well, it doesn't have that much range of, striking your enemy. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay, let's take this for example. You can imagine this as the head. This is your main striking part. Sure, you can do damage with the half, but your principal striking area is the head, the mace head. Now, considering these are maces that we're talking about and not something like an axe head, a sword blade, or a polearm blade, and you have something like a mace head or a warhammer head, you have a small area to hit. The same goes for one-handed axes. You only have so much hitting room. Generally, a general rule of thumb, you have to hit. You're better off hitting precisely with any weapon, but anything with a small striking area that really applies to, because you only have so much striking area on your mace, warhammer, or axe. Now, one of the problems with most one-handed bludgeoning weapons is that you don't have that much area to hit. Second problem, you're only really limited to one form of attack. At least in terms of the mace, you only have really one form of attack, and that's just to biff the other guy. Just absolutely freaking hammer him. Just hit him as hard as you can with the mace, in any way you can. That'll do a lot of damage. You can only really. That's really one of the limitations of a mace style weapon, is you can only hit with the head, and you can't really thrust. You can't really do this, although you can, but it's not really going to do much. Most of the way is at the end. You can do this, You can't really do a thrust. I don't know if there are any maces with a spike on the top, but warhammers do. Some warhammers do. I know that for a fact. Some warhammers have a spike and a beak at the back. So in that terms, the warhammer is better than the mace, because the warhammer has more options than a mace. A mace only has one option, and it's just to hit you, just to strike you with the head. So that's two reasons so far. So one, there's not a lot of striking area. Two, you're only limited to one form of attack. Reach, that's another one. Okay, that's a good one, that's a good one. There's not a lot of reach you can do with this. The head, it can be relatively small. Depending on the design, you can have flanges, or if you want to go quite brutish, you can just you can do spikes like a morning star, and that would somewhat increase the range in a way. But don't have a lot of range. You don't have a lot of reach with this weapon, especially since you don't have anything on the top. Can't reach them that way. You have to be very close, or at least close enough that you can strike effectively with this. So yeah, that's three reasons. So yeah, the three disadvantages I can find with a mace is that one, there's not a lot of area to hit with. Actually, no, I'm gonna rephrase that. So the three disadvantages of a mace I can find at least is one, the weapon does not have a lot of area to hit with. Two, you can only really do one form of attack with it, or at least you're only limited to just striking the enemy. You can do a downward strike, upward strike, sideways strike, but you can really only strike the guy, or bash the guy, however you want to look at it. Three, you don't have a lot of reach. Things like a long sword warhammer, they have more reach than the mace, because the mace, depending on the design, has a spike, has a beak. The sword has that long blade. You can do that. Thrusting with a sword is supremely more effective than thrusting with a mace or a warhammer. The same thing goes for the axe. I say the axe and the mace have that similar problem where they can't really thrust with it. But an axe has a couple more options. You can cut with an axe, you can slash with an axe, you can bash with an axe. This you can only really bash. So yeah, that's another downfall. Now, with that out of the way, let's move on to the two-handed mace. Again, we're using this as the example. Just imagine like this combined with this. Use your imagination. What advantages could you get with a two-handed mace? Well, more power. If you remember my last video, I did a video about the power of leverage. Leverage in terms of, fighting and stuff and weapon design. And in that video, I point out that longer weapons have more leverage, have more leverage, and that leverage adds to their power. If you hit someone with a pole axe or just a Dane axe compared to a one-handed axe, the pole axe can do more damage because it has more leverage and just more kinetic energy because of that leverage. Or one of the reasons because of that, or one of the reasons it has more power is because of leverage. There we go. That's a better way to put it. There's not one whole reason why a weapon has more kinetic energy because of one thing. That's talking in absolutes. But generally speaking, if a weapon has more kinetic energy, it will generally do more damage than a one-handed weapon in most situations. So let's say you have a mace. You have a two-handed mace, and you biff someone hard with it compared to a one-handed mace. Now, what is that going to do? Well, it's going to do more damage. You're going to hit harder. Pole weapons tend to do a lot more better than one-handed weapons. If you hit someone hard with a two-handed mace, you're generally going to do more damage. So that's one advantage. One, it has more power. Two, it has more leverage. Three, it can be as cheap as a one-handed mace. Again, it depends on how you make the mace, how you construct it. Is it a fully metal one? That's very expensive. That's quite the expensive endeavor. To make a long shaft out of metal, that's a very big expense right there. If it was a wooden half with metal langets, that's not as expensive. So it can be as cheap as a one-handed mace. It's essentially just a metal bashy bit on a wooden half. Two, it can do more damage than a one-handed mace. Three, it has more leverage than a one-handed mace. 4, it has more reach than a one-handed mace due to the nature of a pull weapon. Pull weapons have more reach than one-handed weapons. That's pretty self-explanatory. No, 5. Depending on the length of the mace, you can still wear it on you. And what do I mean by that? Well, this is a 5'4", 5'3". I'm 5'6", so I think it's like 5'3", 5'4". You can't wear this. This you can't wear. Now, if you made this shorter, say you made it like above 3 foot, but under 5 foot, you're generally better off. So, say if you're in the middle of those two measurements of 3 foot and 5 foot, you can get away with wearing this on your belt or just on you in general. So 5 and 5.5, 5 and 6, the length can vary, but you're still better off. So depending on the length, you can wear it, and also depending on the length, you'll still be more better off. You still have more advantages than a one-hand mace. There we go. That's the thing. So what are the disadvantages of a two-hand mace? So 1, it can be more expensive than a one-handed full metal mace. There we go. That's one disadvantage. It can be very expensive. It can become very expensive very quick. 2, it will be less nimble than a one-handed mace, but it doesn't mean it'll be like completely unwieldy. No, pole weapons can be nimble. It's just pole weapons are less nimble than one-handed weapons and long swords. There we go. That's the bit. 3. If it's the full length over 5 foot maces, two-handed maces, you can't wear it. You can't wear it comfortably. You can't wear it on your belt. You can't wear it on your. You could probably swing it on your back and walk around with it like a rifle, but no. Generally, it's just more. Third reason, you can't wear it in. You can't wear it around for too long. It'll just get in the way and it'll be over encumbering. Well, not over encumbering, but it'll be encumbering in the way. There we go. That's another con, and that's about it, really. Yeah, that's about it. That's my that's my reasonings, and yeah, I'm gonna sign off now. Video probably video next week. It'll be about spanging helms. Yeah, see ya.